Good afternoon, I'm James Izimoha and you're watching Anewz. Let's see your headlines. Houthis released footage of Eternity Sea ship sinking in the Red Sea. US President Donald Trump says he's considering sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine. The European Court of Human Rights rules Russia violated international law in Ukraine and is responsible for the downing of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17. A surge in attacks in the Red Sea has left one cargo ship sunk, another damaged, and several crew members dead or missing. The Eternity Sea was struck by missiles and sea drones before sinking off the coast of Yemen. The United Nations Security Council says its members agree on the need to prevent a wider regional crisis.
Yemen's Houthi forces have claimed responsibility for sinking the Greek-operated, Liberian-flagged cargo vessel Eternity Sea, in which 4 people died and 14 remain missing. 7 were rescued out of a 22-member crew and a security team of 3 after spending more than 24 hours in the sea. Houthi forces released dramatic footage of what they claim to be the ship before it slipped beneath the surface, leaving behind a slick of oil and debris. They say the vessel had violated a ban on dealings with Israeli ports and ignored repeated warnings. Their spokesman said the attack involved an unmanned boat and 6 missiles. He also claimed their naval unit had rescued some crew members and taken them to safety, though this could not be independently verified.
The Yemeni armed forces affirm they will continue to prevent Israeli navigation in the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea. They renew their warning to all companies dealing with the ports of occupied Palestine that their ships and crews will be targeted in any area within the reach of the armed forces, regardless of the ship's destination.
The vessel was attacked with sea drones and rockets fired from speedboats on Monday and Tuesday, reportedly by Houthi forces. Lifeboats were destroyed, leaving the crew vulnerable. By Wednesday morning, the ship had sunk southwest of Yemen's Hodeidah port. Greek maritime security firm Diaplos, involved in the rescue, released footage showing the survivors being pulled from the water. Eternity Sea is the second ship attacked this week by the Iran-aligned group, after a 7-month-long lull in hostilities. The attack on the Magic Seas on the 6th of July also resulted in the ship sinking, but all crew were rescued. The United Nations Special Envoy to Yemen, Hans Grunberg, warned the Security Council of growing military escalation, including Israeli strikes on Yemeni ports in response.
Yemen must not be drawn deeper into regional crises that threaten to unravel the already extremely fragile situation in the country. The stakes for Yemen are simply too high, and I recognize that for some, on both sides of the conflict, the appetite for a military escalation remains. A military solution, however, remains a dangerous illusion that risks deepening Yemen's suffering.
This comes as Hamas has agreed to release 10 captives in Gaza after talks in Qatar between Israel and Hamas have stalled for a ceasefire. More than 70 people in Gaza were killed on Wednesday.
The Israeli military says it intercepted a missile launched from Yemen, triggering air raid sirens in Tel Aviv. The Houthi group, which controls much of Yemen's population, has been targeting Israel and disrupting shipping lanes. Most of the dozens of missiles and drones they've launched have been intercepted or fallen short. The Houthis claim their attacks are acts of solidarity with Palestinians in Gaza. Hopes for Gaza ceasefire are fading as Israel and Hamas have hit a fresh impasse after days of talks in Doha. Trent Murray has more.
Well, despite cautious optimism earlier in the week that Israel and Hamas may have been close to agreeing to a ceasefire, that optimism now seems to be abating as both sides appear once again to be at an impasse after 5 days of negotiations in the Qatari capital, Doha. Now, we understand that the basic framework for a temporary ceasefire is there. That basic framework includes a temporary 60-day cease to hostilities, with Israel withdrawing from key military positions within the Gaza Strip. In exchange, Hamas willing to hand over 10 Israeli living hostages as well as the bodies of 18 deceased ones. But that is where things stand right now, and we understand both sides are having concerns about what happens after that 60 days ends. Hamas would like to see Israel withdraw completely from the Gaza Strip, but the Israeli position is that they want to maintain some sort of security still within Gaza in order to prevent Hamas rearming. Now, we got some clues potentially into where things stand right now. Earlier today, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking on Fox Business News, said he thinks that there is a good chance that there will be a ceasefire, but he acknowledged the main sticking point is the deployment of IDF troops after the 60 days comes to an end. We also heard, though, from the country's foreign minister, Gideon Zar, who is visiting Slovakia. Now, he has said that Israel is willing, after a temporary ceasefire is agreed, to negotiate a permanent one, but he also said that Hamas is holding 50 Israeli hostages and that the entire war can end tomorrow if those hostages are handed over and Hamas lays down its weapons. So while those negotiations are taking place, of course, both publicly in the media in some ways, but also privately in Doha, what we are seeing in Gaza is that the IDF is actually looking to increase the tempo of its military operations. We've heard in the past few hours that they have said they are placing additional troops into an area around Beit Hanun in the very north of the Gaza Strip, near the northern border fence. They say they are doing that after 5 Israeli soldiers were killed by a roadside bomb planted by Hamas, 14 others injured. The IDF position is that they believe large numbers of Hamas militants are holed up in tunnels there, and they're sending in additional troops to the area with an expected increase in fighting to come. Trent Murray for Anewz, Tel Aviv.
Russia launched drone and missile strikes on Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, early Thursday, killing 2 and injuring 13. Local officials reported damage in 6 of the city's 10 districts. Residential buildings, vehicles, warehouse facilities, and office and non-residential buildings are on fire. Head of Kyiv's military administration, Timur Kechenko, said on Telegram. Moscow has not commented on the attack. U.S. President Donald Trump has said he will consider sending Patriot missiles to Ukraine just days after the United States suspended arms deliveries over concerns about depleting its own stockpiles. Trump said the U.S. would provide more weapons to Ukraine, primarily defensive, to help the war-torn country fend off intensifying Russian advances. His comments come as Russia launched its largest aerial assault on Ukraine to date on Tuesday night, firing 728 drones and 13 missiles in a nationwide overnight attack, according to Ukrainian authorities.
They would like it. They've asked for it. They're very rare indeed, because a lot of systems have been sent to Ukraine. But they would like to. I know they made the request. We're going to have to take a look at it.
President Trump sharply criticized Vladimir Putin's rhetoric on Ukraine, dismissing it as empty and misleading. He pledged increased military support for Kyiv, including Patriot missile systems, and signaled potential new sanctions against Russia in response to its ongoing aggression. Joining us to discuss this is Enrique Cosero from Madrid, Spain. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Now, what new military aid is President Trump pledging to Ukraine, and how significant is the inclusion of Patriot missile systems?
If we can consider, if we can take a step back in time in order to remember what the Ukraine conflict, the Ukraine war was, this is not the first time that Patriot missiles are going to take place on the scenario, on the board of the conflict. Right now, there is I don't know if there is a big chance of Donald Trump finally delivering the Patriot missiles, because I bet he is more prone to reach a ceasefire agreement, or even try to make a peace talk agreement amongst the parts, But right now, the taking place or trying to make the pitchers play on the scenario on the war, it's not gonna ease the conflict. As my better understanding right now, Putin is trying to push off the limits of the Ukraine resistance in order to precisely to reach an agreement. And we know for sure that one of the things that Vladimir Putin wants from Ukraine is just the Donbass in order to connect Russia with Crimea. So I think this is sort of these recent attacks are sort of I don't know how to say this, but in a way, a sort of bargain capital in order to reach an agreement. And I think this is what this war is about since probably 6 to 8 months ago.
Now, how might potential sanctions on buyers of Russian oil affect U.S. foreign policy and global energy markets?
We're in the same situation, in the same position. Okay, we can have sanctions, but during the last 2 years, sanctions have not really paid a price for any sort of deterrent or any sort of restraint to Russia from Russia to attack Ukraine. So I think that Vladimir Putin right now is saying, okay, sanctions, fine. And sort of, I'm going to be boycotted on gas or oil or whatever. Okay, this too shall pass. And sort trying to make sort of a very sloganized way of thinking about Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin knows best than anyone probably that the only thing, the only resolution that could be an exit, way out of this conflict is Ukraine to cede terrain, especially as I said, especially the Donbass. So right now, I don't see that any sort of boycott or sanctions will be any fruitful in order to reach an agreement. The thing is a country sort of United States of Turkey saying, okay, let's gonna try to solve this problem right here, right now. And both of those countries got lots of interest in that conflict to take an end.
Thank you very much for your time and insight.
Thank you very much.
In a significant ruling, Europe's top human rights court has held Russia responsible for the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, which killed all 298 people on board. The court also declared that Moscow systematically violated international law in Ukraine since 2022.
Russia is directly responsible for the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17, according to a unanimous ruling at Europe's top human rights court in Strasbourg. It marks the first time an international court has held Moscow accountable for the July 2014 tragedy that killed 298 people when it was shot down over eastern Ukraine, calling it a grave breach of international law. The court also says that Moscow failed to properly investigate the tragedy, withheld vital information, and inflicted further pain on the victims' families through years of denial.
The flight MH17 was fired by a member of the Russian military crew of the Buk-Taylor or by a member of the DPR. It was not necessary for the court to decide exactly who fired the missile, since Russia was responsible for the acts of the Russian armed force and of the armed separatists.
The court went further, saying that Russia has carried out systematic human rights violations across Ukraine, including indiscriminate attacks on civilians, summary executions, forced displacement, torture used as a weapon of war. The ruling also addressed that those rights violations are tied to the start of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. However, Moscow continues to deny responsibility for MH17 and claims it had no military presence in Ukraine in 2014.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has survived a dramatic no-confidence vote in Strasbourg, the first Commission chief in over a decade to face such a challenge. While she remains in office, the political fallout could pose a threat to her long-term leadership.
Ursula von der Leyen has survived a no-confidence vote in the European Parliament, but not without political bruising.
We are going to vote on a motion of censure on the European Commission.
360 MEPs rejected the motion to censure the European Commission President, while 175 voted in favour and 18 abstained. It was the first time since 2014 that such a vote was held, and although von der Leyen emerged unscathed on paper, the fractures within her own ruling coalition were laid bare. The motion was triggered by Romanian lawmaker Gheorghe Pipera from the right-wing ECR group, citing concerns over transparency, including von der Leyen's undisclosed text exchanges with Pfizer's CEO during the EU's COVID-19 vaccine negotiations, and accusations that the Commission President has centralised too much power in Brussels. But while Pipera admitted the motion was unlikely to pass, he called it a healthy exercise, claiming it has opened a Pandora's box of dissent that could lead to further challenges against von der Leyen in the months ahead. Despite backing from her own European People's Party, many MEPs from other left-wing and socialist blocs hesitated, some threatening to abstain in protest over her perceived rightward shift and backpedalling on the Green Deal. The Liberals ultimately backed down, saying they wouldn't aid the far right in destabilising the EU. Still, the political cost remains clear. Vice President of the Parliament, Katarina Barley, warned that this was von der Leyen's last chance, with many on the centre-left. And while her presidency survives, for now, the vote has weakened the coalition she'll need long-term. As the EU enters a period of budget battles and negotiations on its global role, Ursula von der Leyen faces growing resistance from her own ranks.
Day 2 of the 9th OPEC International Seminar is underway in Vienna, where global energy leaders continue high-level discussions on the future of oil and energy markets. Anita Sharma has more.
Hi everyone, I'm Anita Sharma here at the Hofburg Palace in Vienna for the 9th OPEC International Seminar. Day 1 was officially completed. We had big news on all fronts. Of course, we'll talk about the surprise output hike and how the markets have basically absorbed that news in just a moment. But today is the final day of the seminar. We just heard from COP29 President Mukhtar Babayev. He was part of a panel session where once again he reiterated the need to really commit to energy transition. He, of course, was supposed to be joined by the COP30 president, but he is in Brazil right now for the BRICS summit. Of course, he sent his regards and said that he, like Mr. Babayev, is committed to moving the commitments made in Baku forward. Now, on the sidelines, we also learned that Egypt's Minister of Petroleum met with Azerbaijan's Minister of Energy, and they've agreed to explore joint cooperation initiatives with respect to oil and gas. Now, let's get to the output hike initiative. Officials, I should say, from 3 of OPEC's core producers, we're talking about Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, as well as Kuwait. They say, and I quote, the big boost in supply they announced is needed by the global market. Like I said, oil prices generally accepting that news, taking it in stride. We are seeing slightly higher oil prices this week, but nothing terribly significant. Let's get to what is significant, though. The World Oil Outlook. That is coming out momentarily. We're waiting for the OPEC Secretary General to release the 2025 forecast. All eyes are on this outlook to see where OPEC and OPEC Plus members stand with respect to output, with respect to the analysis of the reserves and how they plan to move forward. Of course, we will bring you the latest here at the OPEC seminar. I'm Anita Sharma. Let's send it back to Baku.
President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, held a meeting with Prime Minister of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, in Abu Dhabi to discuss various aspects of the interstate normalization agenda. According to Azerbaijan's foreign ministry, the leaders reaffirmed that bilateral negotiations are the most effective format for normalization. They agreed to continue direct, result-oriented talks, advance border delimitation efforts, and pursue confidence-building measures. Both sides instructed relevant commissions to maintain practical work on key issues. Georgia's Prime Minister hosted Uzbekistan's Foreign Minister in Tbilisi to boost cooperation on trade, tourism, and strategic middle corridor. Nini Nikolashvili reports from Tbilisi.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Qobakhidze met with Uzbek Foreign Minister Bakhtiar Saidov on July 8 in Tbilisi, the latest in the string of diplomatic efforts to strengthen ties between the two countries. The focus was on deepening economic cooperation with a particular attention to trade, tourism and connectivity projects. At the attention of the discussion was the Middle Corridor, an east-west transport route that bypasses Russia and connects Asia with Europe. With shifting global supply chains and geopolitical tensions, this corridor is gaining strategic weight. Georgia's geographic position gives it a key role, and according to the political expert Tornike Sharashanidze, this role carries even more weight for Georgia than for others in the region. The Middle Corridor is crucial for Georgia because Georgia does not have natural resources or wealth, so it is trying to use its geography and its own resources to the maximum in order to become the regional hub. Cooperation with both neighboring countries and the Central Asian states, including Uzbekistan, is necessary. The relations with China should also be considered so Georgia can receive as much economic benefit as possible. This will ultimately not only boost the economy but will also strengthen Georgia's security because the more useful small country is for major players, the more stable its position becomes, he said to Anewz. This meeting signals growing momentum in Georgia-Uzbekistan ties and reflects a wider push by Tbilisi to turn its strategic geography into long-term economic and political values. It's Nini Nikolashvili reporting from Tbilisi, Anewz.
Afghanistan's Taliban authorities have firmly rejected the arrest warrants issued by the International Criminal Court. The warrants target two senior officials accused of crimes against humanity and the systemic persecution of women and girls since the group seized power in August 2021. Tamiz Bais has more in Kabul.
The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for two of Afghanistan's most senior leaders, Habatullah Khundzada, the country's supreme leader, and Abdulhakim Akhani as Chief Justice. The ICC says there are reasonable grounds to believe the two men are responsible for crime against humanity since August 2021. The charges focus on gender and political-based persecution, including systematic violations of the rights of women and girls and those who opposed the country's gender policies. In a swift response, spokesperson Zabiullah Mujahid rejected the ICC's authority, stating that Afghanistan does not recognize the court. He accused the ICC of double standards, citing what he called genocide in Gaza that continues unpunished. Mujahid said labeling Islamic Sharia law as unjust or oppressive is a direct insult to Muslim beliefs and an act of hostility toward Islam itself. The ICC says the warrants remain sealed to protect witnesses and victims, but made their existence public to help prevent further crimes. It has reaffirmed its calls for the arrest of Afghanistan's top leaders. Afghanistan's leadership maintains it is not bound by the Rome Statute, the treaty that established the court. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for Anewz.
Ankara has been selected as the tourism capital of the Turkic world for 2026. The decision was made at the 10th meeting of the tourism ministers from the Organization of Turkic States held in Ankara. Turkish Culture Minister Mehmet Nuri Ersoy said the title reflects the city's rich history, culture, and its growing role in regional cooperation. A group of international travelers has set out on a unique journey to one of Azerbaijan's legendary industrial landmarks, Oil Rocks, the world's first offshore oil platform. Here's our special report from the Caspian Sea.
Now aboard a vessel heading toward one of the most iconic and mysterious destinations in Caspian Sea, the world's first offshore oil platform, the Oil Rocks.
Located nearly 40 kilometers off the Azerbaijani coast, Oil Rocks was once a marvel of Soviet engineering. Built in 1949, it marked the beginning of offshore drilling as we know it.
This journey is a part of MTP Travelers Group program, which bringing 30 people from 14 countries.
For many of these explorers, it's their first time in Azerbaijan and their first encounter with a floating city powered by steel, oil, and stories of resilience.
Oil Rocks is quite an interesting place. Someplace like I've never seen before, and I've had a good time so far. I've really enjoyed, we went into the museum, and each one of the stops that we went to, each one of the monuments, we were given a good 3 to 5 minutes worth of information, and it was very helpful.
I mean, I generally understood where oil came from and everything, but it's so cool to come out and see it and, actually get to see where people are staying and kind of how it's all done.
Once a groundbreaking feat of offshore construction, Oil Rocks today is a time capsule, a place where history, industry, and the open sea converge for travelers. It's a rare opportunity to step into a place that shaped the modern oil era, yet reminds of the radar of conventional tourism.
With rusted pipelines, endless bridges, and the smell of sea and fuel in the air, the platform tells a story that few get to witness firsthand.
Yeah, so the Oil Rocks, I had been here once before in 2021, and in my understanding, it's only the third time for tourists to come in like this. So I'm very happy to be here. It's impressive. It's very large.
Yeah, well, it's really cool seeing the first offshore oil pump in the world. So a very unique experience. And I understand not many tourists get to go here, so very lucky that we were able to.
In the middle of the Caspian, far from the usual postcard views, Oil Rocks continues to echo the pulse of Azerbaijan's oil legacy, now through the eyes of a new generation of global travelers.
Well, that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to Anewz.